Hey, welcome back to our podcast, Project Brightside, where we always look on the bright side, even when things are looking pretty dark.
I'm Dr. Shelby.
And I'm Richard Brito, and we're your hosts for today's episode.
Topics of discussion for our podcast include society and culture, education, and TV and film.
Each episode of season 2 will have an interview of a guest speaker, followed by a Bright Talk segment where we discuss a complicated topic in hopes of shining light on it.
For today's episode, we'll be interviewing Yen Lam, Master of Health Administration, third-year doctoral student public health with a focus on epidemiology and the interim director of student health services at FAMU.
Hey, welcome to our show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Happy to have you on our show.
Thank you for having me.
So, to start us off, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your interests professionally.
Of course. So my name is Yen Lam, and I do serve as the interim director of student health services here at Florida A&M University. I have a master's of healthcare administration, and I'm currently working in my third year of Doctor of Public Health program. So my focus is also epidemiology and biostatistic. My professional interests revolve around improving student health services, addressing food insecurity, and enhancing public health initiative on college campuses.
Mhm.
I'm particularly passionate about health equity, access to care, and preventative health programs that make a lasting impact on communities.
Yeah, that's nice. It's very impactful for sure. And I could definitely see that as, a good summary of who you are.
You're very clearly well into your way of your career path, but I was just kind of wondering what made you kind of go down this path.
So, my journey into public health was shaped by personal experience and professional opportunities. Growing up as an immigrant, I saw firsthand the barriers that communities face in accessing quality healthcare. So, that made me want to work in healthcare administration and into public health. And over the years, I've been drawn to leadership roles where I can make changes where improving health services for students, advocating for public health policies, or developing programs that address critical health issues such as the food insecurity or disease prevention.
That's like some big goals, but what would you say are some day-to-day like tasks that you look forward to or obstacles that you face, and how would you overcome them? Tell the audience a little bit about that.
So one of my biggest challenges in student health services is balancing administrative side of healthcare with the immediate needs of students. So every day there's always something new. It's never the same thing over and over, and there's always new priorities. And I just have to be able to just jump into that. And another thing that's really hard is like managing staff, ensuring compliance with health regulation, or just responding to like urgent student health concerns. And the key to overcoming these challenges is to be adaptable, transparency, and having a great team. I also rely on data-driven decision making to improve our services and ensure we're meeting the needs of our student effectively.
That's very important because if we don't know like what our population is like struggling with, then like how are we going to address it? So we definitely have to assess, figure out what's going on, and then we could do targeted interventions. I definitely see that and agree with that. I did want to ask you, what would you say, from all of these like responsibilities and things that you have to do on a daily, with, accountability towards others and yourself, what would you say drives you?
Knowing that what I do does affect students, their well-being, and knowing the impact that I do have onto their lives,
Hmm.
especially when they're on campus, and being able to advocate for them. Because when I was in school, I wish someone would have advocated for me, or just growing up as an immigrant too. What drives me is like to know that I have the ability to expand healthcare access for students and advocate like for mental health right now. We're going
Yeah.
through that a lot, and we're seeing a lot of that and just organizing health initiatives. So I do want to make a difference in our student lives or just people lives in general, and seeing that students do see an impact on this and seeing them thrive, it just makes me want to do my job better.
That's awesome. And I definitely see that, we're friends, we're classmates, and I definitely see you and throughout all the classes that we've had together, you're a support system for a lot of people. You're always offering services, connecting people to resources. It's awesome, honestly, like how much of a support system you are in every class to people and how you're just like making sure that people are well taken care of and that they know what's around them and the resources. And you've recommended a lot of good stuff to me, so thank you for that. And I definitely see that as something that drives you.
Thank you.
So I guess moving forward, you mentioned some of your kind of day-to-day goals and the ways that you're able to help people. What do you feel like a few of your biggest priorities for the rest of the year are for 2025?
So what I want, my big priorities would be expanding student health services at FAMU so that students can have more accessibility and efficiency when they do come into a clinic. Strengthening food insecurity on campus by securing grants and partnership because we do have a food pantry on campus, and it's actually one of the biggest one among all the HBCU school
Mm.
nationwide.
Wow.
Enhancing public health education on campus, especially around preventive care and health literacy, and just continue my doctoral program. So hopefully I'll be able to take my comp in the fall and graduate the following fall.
Yeah, so we have different concentrations, but we'll be taking the comp together, but different focuses. Your epidemiology, I'm behavioral sciences and health education. So you have different classes that you have to take, so that's why we have a different end graduation term, but we are in the same year, so that's exciting.
It is.
Yes, we're almost there. We just have to keep going. That Dr. Shelby here is about to be attending. She's a chief
Oh,
resident, and then after that, it's attending. But we're taking step by step. We're enjoying.
boy.
But I do want to ask on a bigger scale, what do you aspire to accomplish within the next 5 years? So it could be some general ideas, like what do you see yourself doing after your program? Have you thought about that yet?
Yes. So in the next 5 years, I see myself continue to grow in leadership roles within public health and healthcare administration. So I would also love to transition into a permanent executive role in a healthcare field, whether it's higher education or just in the healthcare system in general. I also hope to contribute to policy development in public health and to advocate for stronger health equity initiatives, and of course, completing like my program. So that's will be some of the goals that I wish to accomplish within the next 5 years.
That is exciting. And hearing you two talk about it's called the comp, the
Yeah.
exam both
The
are about.
comprehensive exam, yeah. So basically, we have to score an 80 or higher on like I think 12 sections of 12 classes that we've taken. So usually, I think 4 months, so around May, after I've taken all the classes, I think Yen 2, yeah, Yen 2. So we'll be studying this summer and
Oh,
preparing
it's
for
so
that comp.
close. Exciting.
Yeah, but it's in September, thankfully. So
Okay,
it's
okay.
not like too close, but it's not too far off to where it's like, oh, still so deep into the program. No, it's like because the moment I we finish the comp, it's like straight dissertation time. So it's like you could be in and out, like because you should be already like starting to work on it, and that's what they're pushing for, the advisors. So like
Mhm.
take every class as a stepping stone for your project. And that's kind of what we're doing. Like this summer, I'm gonna have to take meta-analyses because I think that's the path. Like I took clinical trials, I took different classes to explore, but I still haven't pinpointed a dissertation. So everything is like a big mountain. We're still figuring it out, but taking it day by day. I don't know if Yen, like if you want to elaborate on your experiences on that. I know we sidetracked, but
Yeah, well, so yes, I'm gonna be taking mine in the fall too, and I guess it's like a 2 days that we have to take all the tests. So I'm trying to put all of my everything I have learned together right now, make into like either a poster or like just notes in general.
we'll
That's
have a study session like we did with
smart.
biostats too.
Yes.
Well, I'm very excited for you both. You're getting there. So I guess the next question is what advice would you offer to those who wish to pursue a career like yours? And I know you both kind of have separate specialties, I guess, but I
Hmm.
mean, I guess we could pose this question to both of you.
So I think for myself, as a student or just for anyone who wants to break into the healthcare field, they should start getting a job, like any job in healthcare field, whether it's working at the front desk, a medical assistant, or even a non-clinical support role. It will help you make connections and just learn the system. So don't ever let your ego get in the way where you think a job is too small. Because I feel like in healthcare or public health is just very hard to just get into. And once you graduate, you're not gonna graduate and just become like an executive or a director immediately. You really have to start from the bottom and just grow your way up. And so you want to take the opportunities that are given to you. So definitely just start internships or fellowship and just start working while you're in school too. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
So for me, answering that question, I I like to be in every like field that I'm passionate about to a certain extent, and I know that you can't like be a jack of all trades as a master of none. I don't really agree with that. I feel like you might not necessarily be the best in every single field, but you could definitely give them a run for their money. Like, for instance, in clinical research, like the competition and poster presentations, like when I podcast, it's a little bit more laid back and it's not like I would present. I definitely remove a lot of the filler words. I try to in person. It's definitely very like performative acting in a way when you're presenting because you're having this mental mapping. I definitely have a lot of fields that I'm interested in, and I want to be competent and skilled in certain things that will benefit me and my people and my community members and just society as in general. So that's why I am so involved in many different things, but I don't want to, get rid of quality.
Mm,
And some things, I might venture into newfound territory where it's like I'm an amateur. Like I am straight up like for instance with the animations, we really did that as a prototype because one of the, cardinal sins of like the industry, like when it comes to media is like, oh, don't fund your own projects. But it's like, we're a startup, like we have to do what we do to make it happen.
yeah.
And we're trying our best. And with the prototypes, the animations, yeah, it might not be like, the best, but it is a prototype and we are starting up and we do have to start somewhere. Like for instance, in high school, I would just volunteer and do a lot of free time just to gain experiences, gain that exposure, and I think that's where the fascination came to a lot of different things. I was fluctuating between law and medicine, and during my master's, like with clinical mental health, like the social work program, I continued to work on the law stuff with the lawyer, but in legal research in the sense of like the impacts of like the system and how we could improve it by offering trainings and professional certifications based on evidence. And that's where I was connected with the lawyer and gaining those 5 years of experience. But at the same time, I was working with Dr. Fleischer in medicine, and I met Dr. Shelby, and we worked on all those projects that we're in, and I
Yeah.
continued those things. So for me, in terms of career, I feel like yes, it's a good thing to expose yourself to a bunch of stuff, but you know, it could make things difficult because there might be so many things that you want to be a part of, and
Mhm.
you might not be able to do it all at once, but if you do a little bit of everything and you're consistent and you remain disciplined in the sense that you never give up, even if it seems like there's mountains and mountains, I think just continuing and trying and it's never too late. I think that would be the advice. And I think don't ever limit yourself. Oh, if you think back, like if I would have gone back to college, what degree would I have actually done? No, like don't think like that. Like no what ifs, because that like is a form of grieving. It's one of the stages. So if you remove that what if, like, and you turn it into an actionable like plan and to like, oh, why not pursue it? Like you have, your life's not over. Like try it. Try to make that happen. Try to plan it out. Even just the ideas of like fantasizing of like what you can do and then making it a reality by using SMART goals like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, like stuff like that. So I think that's my advice. Sorry, I know that was a whole rant,
No,
and
that was good.
thank you, I appreciate it. But yeah, that's my advice.
That's great.
And I'm still figuring it out. So I still have, that's the question that I face every day. I'm like, what am I gonna dive into? I mean, I'm always gonna want to do the Brightside Productions, the Brightside Exchange, because I want that to be a forever thing, and I'm always gonna want to take it to new levels. So I guess that's my career advice. I went from psychology, clinical social work, public health, behavioral sciences, and health education. And then I wanted to merge that into the entertainment industry because in middle school I was like in theater and I completely like pivoted from high school because I was like I was insecure, so I was trying to work on that and I like pivoted because I felt like, oh, you don't want to be in high school like drama. But I'm like, what was I doing? Like why did I
Yeah.
listen to that? But now here's my chance. So that's my advice. Never give up, go for it. It's never too late. So to wrap things up, I do want to ask you the last question of the introduction interview. What's one book, TV show, or podcast outside of ours that you think everyone should experience?
So this question I'm not too sure about because I have not been watching TV or really read. The things that I have been reading is just peer review articles,
That's
and
awesome,
that's because
though.
of school.
No, but that's awesome that you're committed to having a source of, having it be peer reviewed, which is awesome.
Well, I guess with that, we can go ahead and transition to our next segment, which is
Mhm.
Bright Talk, where we discuss complicated topics in hopes of shining light on the matter. And this week, we'll be discussing food insecurity and environmental science. So, with this in mind, let's start off with our questions for this part of the podcast, our Bright Talk topic.
Mhm.
Could you describe to our listeners just what food insecurity is in general?
Okay, so food insecurity is when individuals or household lack reliable access to affordable nutrition food to maintain an active and healthy lifestyle. So it can be short term or long term and is often influenced by financial hardship, geographic location, and systematic barriers.
Yeah, definitely. I could definitely see that. Food insecurity, especially with like location, there's different life expectancies based on where you live. Like you could Google it. There's generator that you could put your zip code and it could like
Mhm.
estimate like your expected life, based on the area. So I do want to ask, what is environmental science? Because we're trying to link the two, but let's break down what environmental science is.
So, environmental science is a study of natural world and how humans interact with it. It examines how ecosystem functions, the impact of human activity on the environment, and ways to address environmental changes such as population, climate change, and resource depletion.
Yeah.
So, I guess kind of trying to connect those two, what is the connection between environmental science and food insecurity?
I think they're deeply connected because environmental factors directly impact food production, distribution, and the availability of it.
Hmm.
Climate change, pollution, soil degradation, and water scarcity all threatens food system, making it harder for communities, especially the vulnerable ones, to have access to nutritious food. Also, unsustainable farming practices and food waste contribute to environmental degradations.
Those are great points. I definitely am grateful that we're talking about food insecurity, environmental science, because it's important to highlight there is a connection between the two. And this question is very important. The next one do want to ask. So, why should everyone care about environmental science issues?
Really, it's just like we don't have another planet. So we all share this planet. So we do
Yeah.
have to take care of it. And our actions really impact the health of our environment, which in turn affects our ability to grow food, access clean water, and maintain a healthy living conditions. So we do have to take care of the one that we're having now.
Yeah, definitely. I agree wholeheartedly because, we're a part of this biosphere and we need to be able to better understand like the food network and how energy is consumed and utilized. We also need to be able to understand the system outwardly and inwardly to be able to improve the human experience and also like cohabitants. We're not the only like species on this planet. A lot of people take environmental science for granted and don't really focus on issues like and sometimes it's this taboo topic that people just don't want to talk about. It's like, oh, climate change, global warming, like been politicized, but it's a science. Like people study this, you know. So I do want to ask you, what would you say are some factors that contribute to food insecurity?
Food deserts. So we all know like food desert is like where people have little or no access to grocery store with fresh nutritious food. Another one is like low accessibility to nutrition dense food. Even if food is available, it may be highly processed or doesn't have the nutritionists in it. And also low social and economic status. Family with limited income may struggle to afford enough food just to eat.
Hmm.
A weak support system, a lack of family or community support can make it harder to access food resources, and isolation and internal influences such as natural disaster or economic shifts can suddenly create food insecurity. So right now, everything is just going up. So that could be also it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all those factors you listed. They're very well summarized, very well pointed out. I do want to highlight one of the factors that you mentioned about
Hmm.
having a weak support system. So,
Hmm.
something that I read recently, and I shared it with you, but it's okay if you haven't had time yet to read it, but I highly recommend whenever you get a chance. an example of what's occurring right now is with Hawaii. So like
Mm-hmm.
they're experiencing food insecurity, and that's been occurring due to the whole or like the increase in prices from the trading, and
Yes.
also like the tourism itself that's been conglomerated like throughout the years is driving out the natives because it's making it like the people that are from that land making it unaffordable. Think about like having to travel to Hawaii itself with the plane. How do we get food there? So trading is very important. Having a strong support system is important, and the system that we're in. So it's all connected. You could apply certain topics to different fields, and there's intersection. There's ways that things appear parallel, you know, not the same, but quite similar.
So we talked a bit about how socioeconomic status and food deserts may impact the ability to have food security. Do you feel like there's a connection between mental health and food insecurity?
Definitely. So food insecurity has been linked to mental health challenges such as like depression and anxiety. The stress of not knowing where your next meal will come from can take a huge emotional toll on a person, and also child development issues. A lack of proper nutrition can lead to cognitive delays, behavior problems, and difficulty concentrating in school.
Yeah, definitely. It's very important during pregnancy for them to have like the proper, prenatal vitamins.
Yeah, I mean, it's important for people to have nutrition as individuals, and then also certainly if they're pregnant or chronically ill, they need that like secondary level of nutrition to help support them. So definitely can impact your health and then also future generations' health, not to mention the epigenetic impact that certain traumas can kind of have on your children and what you pass
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm really grateful that you brought that up because there is a lot of new territory that's like being publicly like disseminated, not like freshly like oh this year no, but it's new territory, new fields, many new fields every time. But what you're mentioning about like the trauma that we carry and how many things we carry, like if you think about it, like there's so many things that people are exposed to and neglected, so much so that things develop, and these chronic conditions could be from one cycle to it's a continual cycle and it just passes on from one generation to the next. It could be systemic issues, it could be just situational where people are located and what they're having to endure generation after generation. So it's very important that we talk about these things so that they could be addressed. I do want to pivot to the next question that I wanted to ask. So, who is most vulnerable to food insecurity?
So certain populations do face a higher risk of food insecurity, such as people with disability, because they have limited mobility or medical expense can make food access challenging. Low income individuals and families, people who struggle to pay rent, utilities, and medical bills often mean like they have to sacrifice eating a meal for the day or for the week even. Homeless individuals, people who are without a stable place to live, getting consistent meals can be really hard for them. And unemployment individuals, a sudden loss of income can quickly lead to food insecurity, and we are seeing a high volume of people being unemployed.
People with disabilities, if they don't have a strong support system, they could just be neglected.
Hmm.
No one's really reporting it, or it's not being reported and it goes unnoticed. And 5 years, 10 years, 15 years go by and critical years of development have occurred. And then now you have these chronic conditions for life, the situations. I'm just explaining in general what could happen. And yeah, I agree with the vulnerable populations that you listed, and the factors that contribute to that vulnerability.
So, what are steps people can take to address food insecurity in their communities?
So what we can do is to educate people about nutritious food and where to find food assistance, volunteering with or supporting our local food programs, advocating for policies that improve food access and security for our community.
Let's say you made a purchase and you never, you regretted it, you didn't want it, you looked at the ingredients, whatever it is that you don't want it, instead of throwing it away, you could donate it. And it's
Yes.
not saying that it's bad food. It's just, in terms of preference, if turned in terms of like if it was a gift, if someone gave you sometimes like Yen, she comes in with a bunch of grapes. I'm not gonna give it away. I'm gonna keep the grapes. But let's say in a situation where Yen gives food to someone and they don't want it, I mean that would be like horrible. Come on now, she's giving free food. But you could always give it to someone that actually needs it. Never discard food. There are a lot of people that are suffering, and we're in America right now, and in this world, there isn't really, in terms of world, this system of the USA, there isn't really a lot of protection with food. It's more so like capitalism, and it takes a little bit longer to have policies that have occurred elsewhere in other countries that actually prioritize the effects that are occurring, by having certain chemicals or ingredients in foods or processed, ultra processed methods that, sometimes we're conditioned to believe, oh, we're eating what we're supposed to. I'm having 3 meals a day, but is it nutrient dense? Is it fulfilling like the calories that you consumed? Like, are you more in a positive than in a negative in the sense of, like, did you waste more energy and did you not consume enough to regenerate that? And stuff like that. It just depends on your specific situation. You have to understand your body. You have to
Mhm.
understand like what you require and like what is, upsets your stomach, what doesn't upset your stomach. Do you have, good bacteria or do you have too much bad bacteria? Are you eating too much meat? It just depends. Some people don't have that luxury. Some people don't have that privilege of deciding what they can or can't eat. It's just what's available. So, and if any is available. So definitely appreciate food. I thank you so much for advocating for, these topics because nutrition is a really, really big topic and, it could play into food insecurity. It's also connected to environmental science. There are so many different fields that have an important say. And I think if there's a multidisciplinary approach to it, I think we could tackle things better because I think things right now are a little bit isolated and we need to connect the system better.
I agree.
Yeah, so definitely contact your representatives. Make that happen.
Absolutely. And they do, especially if you're one of their constituents, they do want to know. Like a lot of times they're voting on things that, they have very little time to brief themselves on, or it may not be their specific area of expertise, and they're kind of relying on people to educate them. And while they have people to do that role, a lot of times they really welcome like extra opinions, especially if you're in that field.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
Or someone who might be listening that's dealing with food insecurity, what's something that they could do to kind of help their situation?
They can definitely seek local resources. So many communities do have food banks, pantries, and meal programs for them that is free to them. They can also look up governmental assistance such as SNAP, which is a Supplement Nutritionist Assistant Program, or WIC, which is Women, Infants, and Children, that can provide financial support for groceries for them. They can also reach out for community support at churches, school, nonprofit. They often have like a lot of food assistance programs and just ask for help. Food insecurity is a big thing. It's a widespread issue, and there are people and organizations that's willing to help you.
you know, Having to navigate emotions as well on top of that, when you think about the associations between, like, if someone's dehydrated, anxiety and depression, like
Hmm.
what there's different levels it impacts people differently. Like someone might, be more depressed if they're not having enough water. Someone might be more anxious and their heart rate might go up. It just depends on the person. And with that, we do need to start understanding, reading a nutritional label on the back. Like, what is the first ingredient? The first ingredient is the heaviest ingredient. From everything of all the ingredients, the first one is the most, the second is the second most, etc. So the very last ingredient, sometimes they might put the most toxic thing, but it's the smallest, but it's still in there. So we definitely, if you have the luxury of, being able to look at that and whatnot, but in other countries, like if we're going outside of the USA, they might not have that ultra processed food or they might not have food at all. So it just depends. At first, genetically modified food, was invented and with the idea of, you know, like if someone had a vitamin A deficiency, let's make, foods that are concentrated in vitamin A to tackle that issue. At first, it came with good purposes, but then the exploitation aspect of it for capitalism, that integration right there, I think that's where it went south. And if you look at obesity, it's, 3 times the rate it's expected to. With food insecurity, if we're just thinking that, if I had the same meal for like 3 weeks, and that same meal, like if you think you'll want meal prepping, but are you neglecting to have like broccoli? Are you neglecting to have nuts? Are you neglecting to have, yogurt? Are you lactose intolerant? Like you have to figure those things out. And if you're continuing to perpetuate things, if you are experiencing food insecurity or if you know someone that is, try to approach it in a very sensitive manner. Don't have any judgment. Engage in mindfulness. That's the, listening, being present without judgment.
You both have discussed food insecurity is a really complicated and often sensitive topic. And so I think it's important to kind of, as providers in the field, all of us, and also, for our listeners, whatever role you may be in, pay attention to what people are saying because sometimes they are hinting towards food insecurity or towards a way that, maybe you could help them or at least be there to be a listening ear. And sometimes they do want you to ask a little bit more, but maybe aren't ready to kind of state it out in the open off the bat. And so I would just encourage everyone to kind of keep an open ear and look for, or I guess screen for food insecurity and kind of follow up when it does come up.
Yeah, and if you want any advice as to like how to approach it, and you might not know how to approach it, uh, you know, interacting with someone that might be experiencing food insecurity and you want to help them, sometimes our, intention might be to like, oh, let's just offer all the resources and whatnot. But I think, something I'm also working on is like asking first, like, oh, would you like to know like some
Mm-hmm.
resources that I know, or not so more so like you're directing, like bossing them around or telling them people like what to do to solve their issues. It's like, oh, to be happy, to cure depression, you just got to be happy. Like, you can't just tell someone, oh, be happy and you'll be not depressed. Like, it's like telling someone that is food insecure, oh, you just got to eat your proper like foods. No, you got to connect them, you got to make it more approachable, but you have to give them the power. So asking like, oh, would it be okay if I talk about some resources that helped me or that helped my friend, or, navigating it with some sensitivity?
Asking for permission is what we call it, like in motivational interviewing, for example.
Good. Yeah. Great point. Definitely. So, thank you so much for coming to the podcast. It was a pleasure having you on our show. It was a wonderful conversation. So, that is it for episode 6 of season 2 of Project Brightside. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting us.
Thank you for having me.
Make sure to recommend our podcast to your friends and family. Also, make sure to keep sharing. Share, share, share. We have a lot more in the works for the rest of season 2. We're not done yet. So until next time, take care.
Episode 6 of season 2 of Project Brightside was executive produced by Richard Brito, Lou Criosti, Shelby Flohr, John Scrivenich, Jay Criosti, Sophia Paez, Andres Gil Arana, and Zoe Rushetsky. Music by Jay Criosti. Edited by Lou Criosti and Richard Brito. Research by our research associate, Margaret Lee. And special thanks to Yen Lam.
Thank you.
Thank you.